Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to get started in a few minutes, but before we get started, we would really love to hear a little bit more about you all. So please in the chat, drop where you're located. Where are you tuning in from? You can let us know what state, what country, if you're a classroom, what school you're with, and we'd also love to know how many people are with you. So if you could put that in the chat, that would be great, and we'll get started momentarily. I love it. I love watching all these people roll in. Please continue to let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat, and we'll get started in a minute. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our event. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you all here. We have a really exciting event for you all, and it's all about penguins. I am super excited about this. I love penguins, as I'm sure many of you do too. My name is Terry Adélie. I am a communications specialist with the Office of Polar Programs at the National Science Foundation. The National Science Foundation is the manager of the U.S. Antarctic program. So a couple things before we get started. As the program rolls on, you are going to be muted. Your video is turned off. This will really help with our connection to Antarctica. We really encourage you all to answer questions. So in a few minutes when we get going, we encourage you to enter your questions that you have into the Q&A box. The Q&A box is at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So the chat will be disabled and you'll want to put your Q&As there. Unfortunately, we're short of time, so we won't be able to answer all of them, but we'll try to get to as many as we can. And this webinar is being recorded, and we will send all attendees a link within the week. So we are tuning in live to Cape Royds in Antarctica. Cape Royds is a strip of land on the western coast of Ross Island, and it is the site of a very large penguin colony, an Adélie penguin colony to be exact. It's located about 20 miles north of the U.S. Antarctic Program's McMurdo Station, and the way you get there is by helicopter. Cape Royds is also the place where researcher Jean Pennycook and her team, they live there for months at a time, and they study the Adélie penguins. So Jean is a longtime career researcher and educator, and she's been on the penguin team since 2006. And Jean is like a wealth of information. She does a lot of amazing work connecting classrooms and folks to share the science research, and also talks about how environmental changes are impacting the lives of the penguins. So Jean, I am going to turn things over to you.
Well, welcome everyone. I hope you can see the penguins. I'm here at Cape Royds on Ross Island, and there is so much drama here with the penguins. As you can see, never a dull moment. I'm going to keep the camera on the penguins as I talk so that you can see what's happening. I do have a little bit of few things to say, but if something happens, I will stop and go to what any drama that's occurring. One of the things I wanted to tell you about Antarctica, many people do not realize that we're in the southern hemisphere, and that means the seasons are reversed. So I am in the middle of summer down here. I know most of you are experiencing winter. I am experiencing summer. Even though it's summertime, it's the same as July for where you are. It's still freezing cold. So it never gets above freezing here. I am in 2 layers on my legs, 4 layers on my top, my expedition parka, 2 hats, 2 pairs of gloves, and heavy boots. It's still very cold. However, today is a gorgeous day. I want you to look around here. Ross Island is a volcanic island, and that is why all the rocks are black. And right over here, oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna go to the drama. So what we have here is somebody who's too close to a nest, and they get jabbed. And then here they do finally found their nest. So that is a greeting. Somebody's come back from the ocean and they're greeting their mate, and then they're going to exchange places on the nest. So I'll address that a little bit later. But for right now, hopefully you can still hear me. I want to go back to what's the rocks here. You'll notice that there's nothing growing. There's nothing green. No grass, no bushes, no trees, nothing. And there, right in the background, is that volcano, which is active, believe it or not, an active volcano in Antarctica. There's a lava lake in the crater of that volcano that throws out lava bombs a couple of times a day sometimes. So it's very active, even though it's covered with glaciers. So that white that you see is not snow, it's glaciers. And down below the volcano, what you see is frozen ocean. There's where the penguins have to go. So from here, they walk down there to the ice, and then around the corner, the ice has broken up and there's open ocean, and they get in there and they get their food. So this is like being on the moon. There's nothing here. So since there's nothing here for these birds to build the nest out of, like at home where they might use twigs or grass or leaves, they use rocks. And this nest right here used to be a nest. It was nice and orderly, but it failed. The chick was taken by the skuas. So this nest is falling apart. Over here, you see another nest with a bird laying in it. That's a beautiful nest built of rocks. She does not have an egg or a chick, but she's still maintaining that nest. These other nests have fallen apart because the chicks are getting big now. Remember, this is summertime. So the birds come here in November, early November. The males make a nest. They do a display and they call a female, hopefully get one to join him in his nest. They lay the eggs and they raise the chicks. Now the summertime here is very short, so all this has to happen at once. These birds here all laid eggs within a 2-week period. They all hatched within a 2 or so week period. And by March, everybody will be gone. Here, I got here at November 4th, and I have not seen a sunset. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 24 hours a day, every day. The sun is not going to set here until February 20th. So not only is it summertime, it's light all the time. Now in the wintertime, it's going to be dark all the time. So these birds have to go away. They can't see in the dark. The ocean's going to freeze over. So they migrate about 1,000 miles north of here to places where the ice is broken up and they can get into the water and they can see, because it's going to be dark, it's going to be cold, and the ocean will be frozen here. To make that happen, these chicks that you're looking at right here have to grow fast. Their rate of growth is so fast. It's like a 7-pound baby being as big as its parent in 2 months. It's crazy. These guys grow so fast, but they've got to. And what we're looking at here are chicks that are, whoa, here comes somebody. He's probably going to steal one of those rocks because this nest is up for grabs. And look at how beautiful he is. These are the Adélie penguins, total black and white. So maybe you've seen pictures of penguins with yellow feathers. These have none. They have no markings on them, just the black and white. They're beautiful. And if you see penguins in commercials, advertisements, it's generally this one. But they're much smaller than the emperor penguin. Whoa, hi, little guy. Got somebody right here who wants to say hi to you. There you go. Say hi to the kids. Say hi to everybody. There you are. Look how beautiful he is. Actually, he's a little bit dirty. My shadow's in the way. But they're, oops, off he goes. And he decided not to play today. The one thing about them you might notice is the white eye ring, which is very distinctive for this breed. Now, these are smaller than the emperors. They only come up to my knee, but they are beautiful, beautiful birds. They weigh about between 8 and 9 pounds. They're very heavy for birds this size because their bones are solid. Unlike other birds that fly, whose bones are hollow, so they can be light, these birds' bones are solid. All right, I want to say hi to everybody. Part of the beauty of my job is that these birds are not afraid of me. They have, as you notice, there's nothing on land here, and there's no land animals in Antarctica at all. No animal lives on land. So there's nothing here for these birds to be afraid of. So luckily, they're not afraid of me. Now that doesn't mean that they're my pets. These are wild animals. They need to stay wild. We do not pet them. We do not handle them. We don't hold them or play with them. And unfortunately, if they get ill or hurt, we can't help them. We are here as observers only, and we record what happens, but we cannot interfere. So that's part of my job. But the beauty is they can't hide because there's no place to hide, so I can find them. And they're not afraid of me, so I can sit real close to them as long as I'm respectful and do not interfere in what they're doing. Some of the adaptations that these birds have for living here are their very heavy coat of feathers. Now I have a couple feathers here I wanted to show you. The feathers are much smaller. I'm going to put this in my hand so you can see it. The feathers are much smaller. Oops, and it blew away. They're much smaller than feathers in other birds. They're very thin and they're solid. So they're not fluffy like other birds. They're thin and they're solid. And there's so many of them. If everybody is sitting at home, make a circle with your finger and your thumb. And look at that circle. That's about a square inch. And if you put that finger and thumb circle on a skin of a chicken, you would find there would be maybe about 10 feathers. You do that on a penguin, and there'd be a couple of hundred feathers. So there's a big difference in the number of feathers these guys have and other birds, particularly ones that are in your area where it's warm. The feathers are very tightly packed down on the bird, like the shingles on your roof. And that way they keep them warm and dry in the water. One of the myths about these birds is that they don't fly. People say, oh, why don't penguins fly? I need to tell you that they do fly. They just fly in the water. The motion of the birds flying in the water is the same motion as birds in the air. These are not ducks. They do not sit on the water and paddle with their feet. They dive into the water and they use their wings to propel them through the water. Their feet are in the back, and that is how they swim. They do not use their feet. So next time someone tells you that penguins don't fly, I want you to say, yes, they do. They just fly in the water. So that's one of the penguin myths that I often, okay, now somebody else has come by to say hi. Can you say hi? Say hi. He's just, this way has just come in. He's very clean. So he's probably just come in from the ocean. His waving of his wings are just a sort of a nervous thing, although he's come to me. He's exploring, he's wondering what's going on here. And again, as long I could reach out and touch him, but again, as long as I'm respectful, he will not run away. Let's see what he does. There you go. Come on. Can you come up closer and say hi? No? All right. Sometimes people ask me if the birds know who I am. I think they know, they don't know me, but they do trust me since I do the same thing every day. Oops, here's somebody over here too. We got lots of guys coming by. Okay, here we go. Come on up and say hi. Again, these are curious birds and they will come and say hi to me. But again, I do not touch them. I will not reach out to them. We're not taming them. Oh, okay, off you go. All right, there you go. It takes about a month for the chicks to hatch, and again, it takes about 2 months for them to grow to the adult size. You can see, oh, all right. I'm just gonna put him here. He might come up. They do like my shoes, and they will play with my shoelaces if I just hold very still. Let's just see what he does as I keep talking. The birds, when you notice the chicks, they are gray feathers. Those feathers will keep the chicks warm, but they do not keep the chicks dry. So the chicks have to molt to their adult feathers before they can go in the water and get their own food. And they have to do that before winter comes. They've got to get it done before it starts to get dark and cold and the ocean freezes. So that's why they're in a rush. That's why the growth has to happen so fast. And that's why these birds are running back and forth to the ocean to get food for these guys. Oh yeah, what do they eat? Well, they eat krill, which is a small shrimp-like creature about the size of your small finger. And they eat silverfish, which is a fish about the size of your big finger. Obviously, they don't have any teeth. Birds don't have teeth. So they have to grab it with their beak and swallow it whole. So it has to be the small stuff. They can only eat small stuff. Wait, how do we know what they're eating? Well, in the olden days, they used to kill the birds and open up their stomachs to see what they were eating. Well, obviously, we're not going to do that. So what I do, it's my job. I sit here and I watch what they're feeding their chicks. And they regurgitate the food into their mouths, and I can see whether it's pink, and I mark in my notebook krill, or if it's silver or white, I mark in my notebook fish. And that way we know what they're eating and what's out there. How do we know where they go? Well, we put data loggers on their backs. We have one out right now, and we have to wait for that bird to bring it back to us before we can get the information. But it tells us where she goes for food, how deep she dives, how many dives, and how long it takes. And that way we know what's going on out in the ocean. We know where they go, we know how long it takes, and we know how much food they bring back to their chicks. Why is that important? It's very important because if we want to protect these birds, and we do, we also have to protect their food source. So we can, if we know where they're going for their food and how much food they need, then we can tell the fishermen that they can't go there. We can maintain or put in a park and say, hey, these are where the penguins are eating and you cannot go there. So this is very important information. And today we have one logger out and we cannot wait to see what we get when she gets back and we can get the logger off. Oh yeah, okay, that means we do have to hold them sometimes, but we are very, very gentle. We grab them very quickly. We're less than 2 minutes holding them to put it on or take it off. And it's attached to their feathers, like you might put a barrette in your hair. So it's not attached to their body. Look how pretty he is. Now that he's up close, I want you to look at his feet. These are not duck feet. Everybody thinks they have duck feet. They are slightly webbed, but they are not duck feet. They're extremely strong. And you can notice his large nails. Those nails are not used for catching fish or anything. They're used to keep him from sliding on the ice and on the rocks. These are very, very, very strong walkers. Since I'm talking about walkers, another myth is that these guys have short legs. Everybody thinks that penguins have short legs. Well, oh, he's taking a rock. All right, buddy, go on. Oops. Someone got mad that he took the rock. All right, they steal rocks all the time. Okay, back to the legs. So I wanted to show you a skeleton of the penguins. This is showing you how long their legs are. You can see there their pelvis and their backbone, and then see the legs, they're quite long. Now look at the bird and see that the legs are about halfway up the body. Can you see the difference there? And that is why they have to have long legs, because they walk a lot. They can't fly, so they have to walk along the ice. They have to walk along the rock here, come out of the ice onto land. These are very powerful walkers, but their legs are inside their body. It'd be like you wrapping a towel around your legs all the way down to your ankles, and then see how you walk. You kind of waddle too. But these birds have very long and powerful legs. Also notice their hip bones are a little bit different. They go to the side rather than straight. So that's a little bit of a difference for these guys. All right, back to the chicks. So the chicks, so you can see there somebody is in the wrong nest. And if they get into somebody else's nest, they will get attacked. And that chick is outside her nest and is not going to, I hope her parents will get her back. Here's where it's very hard for me. I could go in there and pick up that chick and put it back in its nest and keep it safe, but I'm not allowed to, and I have to just bear with me or bear with it, and hopefully it gets in the right place. Oops, here's somebody else. All right, everybody's deciding they want part of this action here. I want to talk to you a little bit about this chick right in front of me. Okay, well, we'll look at that one. People want to stare. So what you're seeing is a chick that is not in its right place, and it is getting attacked by the neighboring nests. These birds are very territorial, and they will attack anything that gets close to their nest, and that includes even other chicks. So I think he's back where he's supposed to be. His parents are right there, so I think we have peace finally. So, okay, wait, you're in the way of my story here. Okay, well, we'll look at you. You're pretty. Look at his wing. Another thing about penguins' wings. Other birds that you know, when they're done flying, they fold their wing up. Well, penguins cannot fold their wing. Their wing is in the position of when they're swimming. They do not fold it. All the other flying birds do. So this is a big difference between these birds and birds that fly. And it sort of gives them that human look. You know, they're standing upright, they got their wings at their side, and it gives them that human look. And that's one of the reasons why we are so engaged by these magnificent creatures. Okay, back to the chick story. Everything's going on. So what this little chick right here is kind of a sad story. You can see the parent is right on the left there with the chick's brother or sister, the sibling, which is almost another third bigger. So this little chick is either not being fed as much as the older brother or the bigger brother or sister, or is just isn't doing well. He's very, very small. And look at all the other chicks around here, how big they are. So it's I'm a little worried about him. He did get out of his nest this morning and got attacked. And at least he got back to his nest, but I'm a little worried. I'll come back and keep an eye on him, but he is not as strong as his sibling and not growing like I would like him to be. The problem is he doesn't have time to grow. He's got to get up and get his adult plumage before winter comes, and it's going to come fast. And if he's not ready to go in the water, he will not survive. Let's see more about what I do and where I live. Okay, I'm out here for 2 months. And I live over the top of that ridge there. So I walk to my office. This is my office. I walk down here every day or twice a day. And I live in a tent. It's a canvas structure stretched over wood. I sleep in a sleeping bag, and I don't have running water, so I can't wash my clothes or my hair or take a shower for the 2 months that I'm out here. I cook on a little stove, and we can only eat food that's either canned or frozen. So I don't have apples or bananas or tomatoes or oranges or any of those kinds of things. But I wouldn't give up this job for anything. So anybody out there thinking about a profession, I want you to consider being a field biologist. There are still so many mysteries that we do not know about our natural world. Okay, you don't want to come to a cold place. Maybe you don't like to work with penguins. Maybe you'd rather work in the northern hemisphere or work where there's nighttime, daytime. There is work everywhere for biologists, environmentalists, people who want to study the natural world and figure out the mysteries of our Earth. It's very, very important. I think I'm coming to the end of my time. I can start to take questions now.
Yeah, Jean, thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. My name is Sarah Eckert. I work for the NSF Office of Polar Programs. And I'm just going to be helping facilitate our Q&A. Jean, thank you so much. I could probably watch these penguins all day, every day. And we have received a number of questions both before the event started and now. So I'm just going to start with some basics. We've had a number of people ask, how many breeding pairs live in the colony? And what has the population of the colony been like? Has it increased, decreased over the past, let's say 10 years or in your time there?
We have about 2,300 nests here. We know this because we flew a drone over them in early December and counted them. We also counted them by hand, the old-fashioned way with walk through the colony and click. But this year we have gotten a drone, and that's a way more accurate way to do it. So about 2,300 nests. And each penguin has 2 eggs, so you can do the math. But of course, not all of them survive. So we will not have 5,000 chicks fledge. We'll probably only get about 2,000 or a little bit more than 2,000 chicks that will actually fledge. Fledging means that they're on their own. Now, that might seem like a lot of birds here, but the rest of my team is in a colony with 500,000 birds. It's over at Cape Royds, huge colony. And there's 5 of my team over there. There's only 2 of us here because this is a smaller colony. The whether it gets bigger. Unfortunately, the other colonies in the area, Cape Bird, we don't know so much about Beaufort Island, although we believe it's expanding, but Cape Royds is expanding, Cape Bird is expanding. Ours, in 2002, there was a very large iceberg that came and lodged itself not right here, but a little ways off. And what it did was it blocked the penguins' ability to get here. So unfortunately, all the penguins that were here died, including all the chicks, and all the penguins that were out there couldn't get back. So our population here was devastated during what we call the iceberg years. And since then, it hasn't really recovered. Why it hasn't recovered is a mystery to us. We're trying to figure that out. I wish somebody would come up with some ideas and help us, because there's no reason for it not to recover, and yet it hasn't. So that's a mystery for us. So we're sitting at about 2,300 nests, where we used to be about 4,000 nests.
Wow, that's so fascinating, and the different colony sizes as well. One of the other common questions we got, and this is Patrick, who I believe is from Maple Elementary School in Seattle, Washington. So we're so glad their class is joining, is how long do these birds live for? What's the lifespan of an Adélie penguin?
Well, in zoos, they live around 25 years, but that doesn't count. So obviously we want to know how long they live here. Well, how do we know that? Well, when these chicks get to be a little bit bigger and ready to be on their own, we'll select about 200 of them, and we'll put a band on them. The band is metal. It's about the size of your finger, and it goes around their left wing. It'd be like you wearing an identification bracelet that tells us who you are, where you were born, and what year you were born. So that way we can follow their lives. So the bands, we walk through our colony here, as I can show you around. We got lots of birds and groups everywhere. And we walk the colony and we look for those birds with bands and record what they're doing. And one of the basic questions is, how long do they live? Well, we wouldn't know except that with this banding thing, and it has to be a long-term one. Well, I'm just going to say we don't know how long they live, but we will say the oldest bird we've seen is 20 years old. If they don't come back here, it doesn't mean they died. It may mean they just don't want to raise chicks anymore. But the oldest one we have seen is 20.
Awesome. This is so great. So I want to ask some more questions. We've got lots of questions about penguins, and then we also have lots of questions for you, Jean. People want to know about you a little bit more. So that's coming. But what would you say the difference is between Adélie penguins and, for example, the other Antarctic penguins that maybe emperor penguins that people are most familiar with? How would you maybe describe Adélies versus the other penguin species? How many other penguin species are there, and how they all interact?
Well, there's the number of penguin species is up to debate by the taxonomists. We're just going to go with the 18, which is the current thinking for us, 18 species. Now, they don't all live in Antarctica, remember, but they do all live south of the equator. So penguins, for some reason, do not go north of the equator. We haven't even found any penguin fossils north of the equator. So they all live south of the equator, but not all, a lot of them live in Argentina and South Africa and Australia and New Zealand. So even the Galapagos. So there's warm-blooded ones. The true Antarctic penguins are only really the Adélie and the emperor, because those are the ones that live on the continent of Antarctica and must have ice. So we call them ice obligates. Just like the birds in your area live in the trees, these birds live on the ice. The emperors live on the ice all the time. They never come on to land, even to raise their chicks. They live in the water or on the ice their entire lives. These guys live in the water or on the ice only 80% of their lives. The other part is here. So that's what makes these two species extraordinary, special, and a danger to the ice going away. If the ice goes away, it'd be like you out there chopping down all the trees. It doesn't kill the birds, but they don't have any place to live. So the ice is important for these birds. Now, there are other penguins that live in the Antarctic region, a little bit north on the peninsula side, the chinstraps, the gentoos, the rockhoppers, magellanics, etc. But they don't really like the ice. So they're in areas where there isn't any ice. And so if the ice recedes and goes away, those species will probably thrive, but these guys will not. And that is what climate change is going to do for the emperor and the Adélie. And we're already seeing some of that happening.
I'm really glad you mentioned that because we got a lot of questions about how climate change is impacting the penguins. So it's great that you answered that question right off the bat. Since you are obviously in a breathing penguin colony here, we see chicks, we see males and females. A few questions about what their breathing behaviors are like. So do they have one mate for the entire lifespan? And if so, what happens if their mate dies? Do they only mate once a season? Those types of questions a lot of people want to know about.
Well, those are good questions. And that's another myth. People think that penguins mate for life. They do not. So remembering that the season to mate is very, very short. They don't have time to wait for last year's mate to show up. If their mate isn't here, and they don't, swans migrate together, so they have a family unit, and other birds do that too, cranes do that too, but these guys don't. When they migrate, they're just off in a big mosh pit. Everybody goes in different directions. So if the mates want to get back together again, they both have to come back here and find each other at the right time. Well, as you can imagine, that doesn't always happen. So the male gets here and he'll wait a little bit for the female to return from last year, but if she doesn't, he'll find someone else. And if the female shows up and can't find her mate, then she finds someone else. How do we know this? Because of the banding thing. We see that the birds move around. They do not have the same mate. They do not have the same nest. So because of that banding process, this is how we know this.
Awesome. So Celia would like to know, how big are the penguins' brains?
Well, you can see their heads there. It's not very big. You might call these bird brains, but please, if you ever call somebody a bird brain, know that that is a compliment. These birds are geniuses. They can go into the ocean and find their food. They don't go to a grocery store. They don't go to that bush over there that's there every year. They have to go out into the open ocean and find food. They navigate 1,000 miles away and then 1,000 miles back to the exact same colony and sometimes the exact same nest. These birds are geniuses, absolutely geniuses, but their brain is very small, kind of like a chicken.
Okay, so we'll take that as a compliment. Hopefully my sister remembers that and heard that. So obviously it's cold for you as a human. I think before we started, you said it's about 32 degrees there. So freezing. It's actually colder there than it is here in Virginia today. How do the penguins adapt to this cold? So for example, do they feel cold? That was one of the questions.
Well, I don't think they do feel the cold. They are completely covered in feathers. There's probably on their wings, there's probably 10,000 feathers. They've got so many feathers and they are warm-blooded. I get that question a lot. Are these cold-blooded? No, these are birds and they're warm-blooded. Their body temperature is about the same as ours. So they have to keep warm. Now I'm sitting in, 5 layers of clothing and hats and stuff, but they've got these feathers and it's about the feathers. And the only place on their body, look at this guy's beak right in front of me, for instance. A lot of people think, well, he's turned away. A lot of people think that their beaks are really short. They're not. They're huge. They go all the way back to their eyes almost, but they're covered in feathers. Their beak. What other bird has their beak covered in feathers? Not too many. What other bird has all their legs inside their body and covered with feathers? Nobody. These birds are completely covered, and those feathers keep them warm and most importantly, keep them dry. If they were to get wet in the water, they would be in trouble just like we would.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm glad you're bundled up for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Keep you safe and warm. And the penguins have adapted, so that's good to know. So when you were talking earlier, you mentioned that there aren't any land predators in Antarctica. However, what about when they enter the water? What do they have to look out for? What is a threat to them?
Let me back up on that land predator. There's no land predator for the adults. However, we do have the South Polar skua here, which it has a look of a gull, a seagull. It's not a seagull, but it kind of looks like one. And they're big and they're powerful and they're everywhere, all over the place. And they it'd be too hard for you to see, but they have their nests here and their chicks here as well. And they do not go after the adults, but they will take a chick or an egg. And that, again, is where I cannot interfere, although I would love to scare them away. I'm not allowed to. So we do have that predator here for the chicks and the eggs. Luckily, these chicks are getting pretty big, so the skuas will have trouble getting them now. In the water, the predator for the adults is the leopard seal. It is a huge seal. If you're not familiar with them, Google them and see what they look like. Massive creatures, and they can't outswim the penguins, but they grab them as they jump in the water. They hide under the ice, and then the penguins jump in and they grab them. So again, obviously I can't be in the water to help them, but that's the primary predator of the penguins.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in the water with a leopard seal either. So good move. Once they get in the water, how long can they dive for? How long has your research been able to figure that out? I know you talked about the data loggers before.
It varies. It turns out it varies between the females and the males. So the females dive around 50 meters. The males dive a little bit more. It depends on where they are, how many dives, but 30 to 50 dives to get as much food as they need. But of course, it depends on the concentration of the food. Also, if the whales are here. So we have minke whales in the area. And when they come in, of course, they're krill eaters as well. So if they're in the area, they compete with these birds for food. So it takes the penguins a little bit longer. And sometimes during that time, they go to fish. And so I can see that as I'm watching them feed their chicks. And all of a sudden, there's no krill. They're all feeding fish. I go, what's going on here? Well, it's the whales are here. That's why. So and sometimes they can go a short distance. For instance, I'm watching the turnover here between males and females on the nest every day, which is great, which means they don't have to go very far for the food. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 days before a mate will come back, which means, all right, another chick's on the loose. Which means that they had to go further for the food. And that's always a problem. So it just depends.
Awesome. It's like there's some excitement over there with the chicks and
yeah, the chicks are wandering out of the nest. In fact, this one's worrying me. You can see the one at the edge of the colony. Now he's got his parent next to him, but if his parent decided not to be there, he would be vulnerable to the skuas.
Okay. So mom or dad is there protecting the animal. So how else do the penguins, the adults, protect their young during this whole breeding?
They can attack the skuas if the skuas come by, but the skuas hunt in teams, unfortunately, which is a problem. The penguins can only go after one at a time. So when the skuas come in teams, what they do is they drag the chick away and then eat it. It's kind of gruesome. I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's nature. And I cannot interfere, of course, so I have to look at that sometimes.
Yeah, we had a few questions about if you could interfere, and I know that is something that we take very seriously, and not interfering with the population at all.
No, unfortunately, it's against all the rules. I mean, even it's illegal rules, but also the rules of our research, the rules. The skuas are protected birds and they need to eat, and this is what they eat. So it's just nature.
Nature, exactly. So what would you say, before I switch into questions that some people have about you and your experience, is can you tell the difference between male and female penguins? And or generally, are you able to tell one penguin from another? Do they have distinctions that you can tell after spending years observing?
Well, the males tend to be a little bit bigger. They tend to have a longer wing, but like in humans, it's a range. So as I look out here, I cannot say, oh yeah, that's a female and that's a male. I mean, I could, and you wouldn't know the difference. I'd be lying.
That's true. That is true.
No, yeah. I cannot tell for sure. However, when we ban them as chicks, of course we can't tell them when they're chicks. But as they get older and during the breeding season, we can figure out who the males are, and then we record band 6295 as a female, or band 6. For one thing, I saw one lay an egg. Well, that's a female for sure. So, so I saw one of our banded birds lay an egg this year. Well, that goes into the database as a for sure female. So behaviors like that give them away. But sometimes we don't know. There are banded birds that we still aren't real sure who's who. So that's
unlike what we might experience in the Northern Hemisphere with kind of your classic ducks, where you've got your brown females and you've got your mallards, green head ducks, you can't tell like that here for these penguins.
No, and that's consistent with most seabirds. So remember, these are seabirds. And if anybody who's interested in birds, if you look up seabirds and learn about seabirds, gosh, I want to say 100%, but I might be wrong on that, are what we call monomorphic. They're the same. You cannot tell them apart. Some of them have bigger size differences than the penguins do, but for the most part, seabirds are all look alike. It's a nature of their group. Oh, there's a banded bird that just came in here. Oh, well, I might come over here and you can see a band.
Perfect.
He's on the other side of the colony. Maybe what I'll do is I'll get up and walk over there. Yeah.
So, Jean, what would you say inspired you? So this question came from Alice West Fleet Elementary School. What would you say inspired you to become a scientist, to study penguins? Did you always know that's what you wanted to do, or did it come to you after years of other work?
I always knew that I wanted to work with wild animals in the wild. When I was a kid, I was always at the nature center, always in the canyon. You can't believe how many wild animals I had as pets. My poor beleaguered parents were very patient and encouraging, but I did make a lot of messes in my house. So I always knew this is what I wanted to do. As I got older, I got a degree in wildlife and fisheries biology and a master's as well. And I just knew this is what I wanted to do. I worked with fish for a while. That wasn't very satisfying. I worked in zoos. I actually did work in zoos for a while, and I just, that wasn't for me. It was okay, but it wasn't for me, even though they were wild animals. Then I was a high school science teacher for a while, and then I wanted to get back into the field. I worked with quail for a while. I wanted to get back in the field, and I came to Antarctica, and that was over 20 years ago, and I just know this is where I need to be.
As they say, the rest is history, right?
Yeah, that's just history, right.
So I know we're coming to the end of our time, so I just want to leave you with the last question, which is kind of a two-part question, so I'm cheating here, is people want to know, how can they get involved? Can they volunteer? But also, what can they do from their homes and their schools here, either in the US or around the world, to help either protect or raise awareness of these animals? What would you say?
There's lots of ways to get involved. There are some citizen science projects, and one of them is counting penguins. So if you write down Penguin Watch and you Google Penguin Watch, you'll get onto their site. This is an organization that has cameras in lots and lots of penguin colonies. We had one here for a while, and it takes pictures, and then thousands of pictures in lots and lots of colonies, and they're monitoring the population. There's so many pictures, the scientists can't do it. So the pictures are on the web for people to help us count the birds, adults, chicks, eggs, nests, things like that. So that is a really great citizen science project. You can also get involved with ours. I have a postcard project and a flag project and a nest check project. There's lots of ways for kids to watch these penguins. I have 8 nests this year that I take a picture every day of the nests, and you can follow along the family to see how they're raising their chicks and taking their foraging trips, and male versus female, and compare the nets. So there's lots of activities for kids to do there. Now I forgot the rest of the question.
No, I think that's perfect. Jean, your projects, are they on the Penguin Science website?
Yes, they are.
Okay, perfect. So anybody who's wondering, where do I get involved? How do I find all of this? When I send out the recording of the event, I will include a link to the research team's website, and you can find all that information there. So I do want to thank Jean, obviously, for her time. I know Terry's going to hop back on for a minute and close us out. But thank you. I know we had so many questions that we were not able to get to all of them, but please keep following along, and we'll be bringing you more penguins, I'm sure, in the future.
All right. Thank you so much, Jean. That was fascinating. I just, like Sarah said, I could watch these guys all day. If you want more penguins and more of Antarctica, the website there that Sarah was just talking about is on the screen. It's penguinscience.com. There's a webcam on that website, as well as an additional webcam on the United States Antarctic Program website. So here's a bunch of great resources for you all. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to attend our event. I just want to do a shout out also to Flint Hill School in Oakton, Virginia. Glad you guys could make it. So thanks very much and have a great rest of the week.